Welcome. It's June 15th, 2026, and Elon Musk has become the first trillionaire over the weekend. On top of that, Tulsi Gabbard also just released big information on biolabs all across the planet. And as well as that, we also have a B-2 bomber that crashed in the U.S. on U.S. soil. And we also have H.R. 8800 Section 622. You might not have heard about it yet. You might have only heard about H.R. 8800 subsections 222 and 223, 224, but not 622 or 622. So ultimately, we have a lot of news today, and we also have Trump's peace deal with Iran that potentially might actually be real this time. But again, we've been saying that for a while because it's gone back and forth. We don't really know what's actually going to happen. So again, let's cover history, SpaceX's IPO, and everything Elon Musk has done to commit all of that history. And as well as that, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and support the information and the news. So we'll be covering maritime traffic as well as some other big information that you need to know. So let's get right into it. Ultimately, this is what I think is going to happen when we look at what's happening in the world. I wanted to cover this first video. Let's take a listen to Elon Musk, the Great, Elon the Great, on what happened with SpaceX.
Thank you, Gwen. Gwen Shaw has been an incredible partner and was one of the first people to join the company. And so thank you, Gwen. Oh, she's in New York, of course. Where is she?
Historic.
Yeah, it is certainly hard to believe that a little company that started in a warehouse in El Segundo is now going public for with the largest IPO that ever. And let me tell you, if people had told me this was going to happen, I was like, man, you must be smoking some really good crack.
And by the way, this was the largest IPO to ever be released, and it was $10 billion over what was actually projected.
This company's going to fail.
He thought it was going to fail. Never give up.
I give SpaceX less than a 10% chance of succeeding at all, to be clear. In fact, I tell people this. I said, look, we're probably going to fail, but we should give it a try, because if we don't, if there's not a new company that enters space, we will never be a truly spacefaring civilization.
True.
The other aerospace companies, they built good rockets and everything. They were simply not pursuing the technology that's necessary to make life multiplanetary, to make Star Trek, to make the exciting science fiction futures that we've read about real. And that's what SpaceX is all about, is to take the fiction out of science fiction.
Yeah, let's hope we have a Star Trek future and not a Terminator 2 future, maybe.
And create an exciting, inspiring future for everyone. We want to be able to take anyone who wants to go to the moon, anyone who wants to go to Mars, or anyone in the solar system, and maybe beyond the solar system at some point. We want to be able to take you there. Not just a few astronauts. I mean you, literally you. If you watch, whoever you are watching this, SpaceX wants to be able to take you to the moon, take you to Mars, and ultimately beyond. And I'm confident at this point that with the incredible team that we have here at SpaceX, that we will do that for you.
We will see.
I always think about this, that there are always problems on Earth. There are always problems on Earth. There are always things that we wish to be better, that we want to solve here on Earth, and we should solve them. But there also have to be things that get you excited about the future, that make you glad to wake up in the morning, because you can't wait to see what happens next. And that's the future that SpaceX wants to bring to you.
I think like most of that froze because OBS Studio is terrible and it always freezes all my frames. So you missed like half of that. Hopefully you got to hear a little bit of it in the background, but we're just going to keep on moving on with this story. Again, it was big though. Elon Musk becomes the world's first trillionaire, and that is really huge at the end of the day. Fortune topped $1 trillion as SpaceX began trading on Friday. So again, here's more on
Musk
that
is
story.
pretty much guaranteed to become a trillionaire, right? Even at 135, he's a trillionaire because his SpaceX stake is worth $690 billion at that 135. Tesla, his net worth there is about $279 billion. So, looks like he's probably going to make it if the stock gains at all. Obviously, his growth in profile and wealth has come with, some criticism, right? That activists have pushed back against him as a rich person, but also
It's
his
Elon.
government involvement last year didn't help matters.
Right. I mean,
The guy's like giving people sight, okay? It's like kind of a different story. It's not like he's Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates where they do kind of a lot of very unconstructive things with their wealth. It's Elon Musk. Okay, he created Neuralink. Yeah, you can say that's the mark of the beast. One side of you could say that. The other part of you could say, well, Neuralink is also giving people vision who were blind. Neuralink is also fixing the entire limbic system of the entire human body, right? When you look at Elon, this is a trillionaire, sure, but at the end of the day, this is a trillionaire who's also going to give, again, sight to blind people. Paraplegics are going to be able to walk again, and the haters out there are going to hate. But ultimately, this is a man who's solving trillion-dollar problems. And that is what entrepreneurship is. That is the American dream, is to be able to accomplish those problems. His favorite book, Elon's favorite book, is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And when you really look at Elon's life, if you read the biography on Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson, talks a lot about how Elon was always a strategist. And he wasn't always this kind of person. And, he built PayPal up, and he was just always super focused and motivated, and he's hungry. And that is the kind of human being that we all need to strive to be, in my opinion. We need to be shooting for the stars and trying to go to Mars. Ultimately, that's kind of my opinion on the matter. So this isn't like any other, multi-billionaire. This is a trillionaire now, and it's because this is a guy who solves trillion-dollar problems. He's getting the entire human civilization to become a multi-planetary species. I think these are all rather pretty cool things.
if you look at the numbers, he's made a tremendous amount of money since Trump was elected, right? That whole bet has paid off big time for him. But yeah, you have the connection with the White House and the administration, but also just a lot of things he's posting on X, which is a story in itself, is the fact that he's putting a lot of stuff out there that's pretty controversial and offensive to some people, and it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to be, he's not being punished like a normal CEO would have been punished, right? Like lost his job. Company
Dude, he's pushing the
shares going
limits.
down. It doesn't seem to matter when it comes to SpaceX. Like that's all forgiven.
Yeah, and they want to talk about his tweets and the controversial things he says. That's the best part about Elon Musk, if you ask me. Elon Musk is an example of free speech. He basically turned to X, which was this completely curated thing that completely suppressed your freedom of speech and all of these things, and he turned it into this real open source intelligence software. This is why on this show I cover a lot of Twitter, and I go on Twitter. We look at the videos on Twitter because it's a completely different platform since Elon bought it. Since Elon acquired X has become a place where real media aggregation can actually happen. You can actually find the truth through alternative media. One of the mottos of Twitter is, "You are the media now." And that's because everybody can become a journalist because this free speech platform isn't constantly censoring you, right? There's not all this copyright violations and this and that and hate speech and, all of this crap. You ultimately have a certain limitation. Yeah, so you still have certain limitations to your free speech and stuff. And, Elon's been... he's gotten a lot of hate because there have been certain accounts that have been suppressed over the years, but overall, pretty good. And I like where X has been going. So when you look at everything Elon's built over time, it's all stuff that solves real problems in human civilization.
Forgotten.
Not even just SpaceX. It seems that the rules, normal rules in general, do not apply to him. I mean, and that goes back to the fact that he has 85% voting share in SpaceX as well.
Right.
It goes back to the fact that he put it at 135, and he's just like, I declare. Yeah. It goes back to the fact that all the brokerages are restricting people from retail investors, that this is the price of admission, that they're not allowed to sell their shares for a while. To me, that all comes back to the power of Elon Musk.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago.
Okay, but that power comes not just from Elon Musk. There's also shareholders and advertisers that he turned down. Okay, Elon Musk has control over his companies because he didn't basically allow all of these advertisers to come in and steal his company, right? The shareholders that own portions of SpaceX are the people who work for him, mostly. Same thing with Tesla. And what he did is he used these companies Tesla, which is an autonomous vehicle company, and which is mainly an AI company, and he combined this with SpaceX, which is obviously a multiplanetary species mission. And so you combine these two companies, and what does it actually do? Well, that's giving him that 51% ownership that he needs in order to make those kind of decisions, in order to have that kind of control over his own company. He said no to advertisers when all of his competitors said yes to advertisers, and that's the difference. He's an independent man. Every single dollar he made was built off of his own genius and saying no most of the time to all of the things that Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and, all these other players really never said no to. That's why he's winning.
Think about
he took higher
when Tesla
risks.
Shares were under pressure back when he was still kind of doing the Doge things. And that was, I guess, a little bit different because there was a way, obviously with Tesla, more people buy cars than spaceships. So I think there was a way for the average consumer to maybe fight back, or maybe we saw all the stickers of like, I bought this Tesla before Elon was Elon.
Right.
And so like there is a little bit of a difference, I think, with this one specifically, just because of it being more of a B2B than a B2C play. But I think, a lot of people thought that was a terrible move back then, and now I guess this is one of those clear cases of someone in this camp, very rich man, makes the bet, and now it's playing out, and to your point, Julie, getting to change all the rules, and I don't know how many of those rules would be able to be changed if he didn't kind of align himself.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, of course you don't know, because you don't study Elon. You don't study the greats, and that was ultimately what is going on. Why are these... Gosh, these ads are just so ridiculous. So insufferable. But the reason Elon was successful is because he said no to all of these other things that his competitors said yes on. Again, like advertisers. What did Elon say when they offered him advertisers and they said, what do you say to advertisers who don't like what you're saying? And he basically says, F you. F you and F advertisers. You're not going to tell me what I can and can't say. And that's power. That's independence. And overall, that is an entrepreneur. That's a leader of the future. And that's why he is a trillionaire. Elon Musk became the world's first trillionaire on Friday following the record-breaking stock market debut of his company SpaceX. With a current estimated net worth of about $1.1 trillion, according to Bloomberg, Musk sits well above wealthy billionaires topping rich lists, including Google co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, and boss of French luxury goods group LVMH, Bernard Arnault. Musk, who first made waves in the tech industry in the late 1990s, hasn't always topped the rich list enough. In January 2020, he was only the 35th richest person in the world with a fortune of around $28 billion. But his wealth took off that year as the value of the two biggest companies, electric car maker Tesla and space exploration and AI firm SpaceX, began to grow sharply. Again, they grew together, SpaceX, and then you had Tesla. And so he used this was his strategy. He is a completely self-funded entrepreneur. All of his ideas self-funded, and then maybe you got some shareholders and fellow investors. You got the Cubans and all the people who invested in these companies from the get-go. And then, of course, his employees, who were major shareholders. The long scroll chart below traces the volatile journey over the last 6 years. His wealth trajectory mimics a jagged mountain range with dramatic surges and steep declines driven by swings in Tesla's share price, the rising value of SpaceX, and shifts in political and investor sentiment during his time in the Trump administration. So again, Musk's net worth has risen sharply since 2020, and you can really see it here. Elon Musk, Bernard Arnault, you see these different tracks here. You got Jeff Bezos right here, and Musk was the 35th richest person at the beginning of 2020. And then look at the way this grows. In January 2021, $195 billion. Musk briefly overtakes Jeff Bezos as the richest person in the world. So all of this is just over time. Accumulation of assets is what this is. Shareholders and using the system. This is how you win. And then November 2021, $340 billion. Surge in Tesla stock. Again, he's depending on his own shareholders, his own company. He's enriching his own people. And at the same time, he is the only market for AI vehicles, at least in the United States, or one of them. One of the main ones, at least, and mass producing globally. And then April 2022, $251 billion. This is the initiate acquisition of Twitter. So again, what we now call X. And then October 2022, $204 billion finalizes the acquisition of Twitter. And then in January 2023, $124 billion. Musk loses over $100 billion in net worth within a year. Okay, and then he keeps going, though. NASA awards SpaceX $843 million to deorbit the ISS. So again, problem solving. These are trillion-dollar problems, $100 billion problems, or multi-million or $100 million problems. This is June 2024. And then we look in November of 2024, $264 billion net worth. This is the U.S. election. He put a lot of money into Donald Trump's campaign. And then in May 2025, $387 billion leaves the Trump administration with Doge, and he was basically kicked out, really. And then, basically, from that point on, look at how much time he had to grow. So he had acquired X. He helped basically get Trump elected and tried to really grow the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, and tried to do all of that on the side. And they basically kicked him out. So what did he do? He basically put all of his time and energy towards business. So in December of 2025, we see $638 billion, reports of SpaceX going public in 2026. So talk about a massive FU to the system. This is Elon Musk. This is the story of the Musk. February 2026, $670 billion, SpaceX and XAI merge. So both of these companies merged. This was the major catalyst to this entire net worth. So Musk's net worth reaches $1.11 trillion after SpaceX goes public. And so really, again, that's because of that merging of XAI, SpaceX, and then you also look at Tesla and how those companies all grew together. All assets self-funded by Elon Musk. By January 2021, the tech mogul had risen to become the world's richest person, briefly overtaking Jeff Bezos, but his fortune dipped in 2022 amid a downturn in U.S. tech stocks and fell sharply again in 2025 as investor concerns over his role in the Trump administration coincided with a slump in Tesla's share price. Each time he has come back stronger. Now a trillionaire, Musk is almost 4 times richer than his nearest rival, Larry Page, and more than 5 times richer than the Meta boss, Mark Zuckerberg. But what does $1,000 billion, that's one followed by 12 zeros, actually look like? The chart below breaks the unimaginable sum down dot by dot, comparing his total wealth to other high-profile figures, government spending budgets, and luxury assets. So take a look at this comparison. That's insane. Okay, one circle is $1 billion. $2 billion could buy around 310 million pints of beer in the UK. Less than $1 billion, the personal wealth of King Charles. Crazy. $13 billion, the most valuable sports team in the world, the Dallas Cowboys. $88 billion, England's school budget for 2025 to 2026. That's crazy. $8 billion, net worth of Donald Trump and his family. You have $4 to $5 billion. Again, estimated market value of Buckingham Palace, considered the most expensive residence in the world. Then you have $51 billion, Britain's richest family, Sanjay and Dira Handura. $5.4 billion, the value of Arsenal Football Club. $142 billion, value of Uber, best known for its ride-hailing services. That's pretty big net worth. Okay, we're getting there. Now we have the Taylor Swift, $2 billion. I don't see why'd they have to put Taylor Swift in there. What does that even matter to this conversation? And then $2.9 billion, box office ticket sales for Avatar, the highest grossing film of all time. So that's insane. When you look at all of that, Elon Musk eats all of them alive, basically. Insane. So again, it's important to remember that Musk's wealth is mainly made up of stock holdings that can rise or fall depending on investor sentiment. Indeed, in February, the tech mogul said on X that less than 0.1% of his net worth was held in cash. Musk currently owns a 12% stake in Tesla, a company with a market valuation of around $1.5 trillion, and a 42% stake in SpaceX, which is now worth more than $2 trillion. Many of his shares have been pledged as collateral against personal loans. The tech boss also owns stakes in smaller businesses, including The Boring Company, a tunnel construction firm, and Neuralink, which develops implantable brain-computer interfaces. This extreme reliance on paper assets rather than liquid cash creates a striking imbalance. As the breakdown below illustrates, the horizontal block of his wealth is almost entirely consumed by 2 massive corporate holdings, leaving virtually no room for actual cash. So again, when we investigate this further, look at that. Neuralink's worth $3 billion. The Boring Company's worth $3 billion. He's building an entire infrastructure of different assets. Okay, this is an entrepreneur who's completely self-funded. SpaceX, $821 billion, and Tesla, $284 billion. So again, you look at these different companies, he's using the system, he's playing the game. Historically, the world's wealthiest individuals earn fortunes in sectors like finance and manufacturing. Today, the global rich list tells us a completely different story. Look at the grid below. The expanding blue blots show how completely tech titans have monopolized the top spots over the last decade. Back in 2015, only 2 of the world's top 10 richest people were from the tech world. Now that number is 7, including the entire top 6. So again, increasing number of billionaires are from the tech industry. Yeah, I mean, they're living in the future. They're building, they know what's coming. The digital future, the tokenization of assets and all of these things, artificial intelligence, AGI, quantum computing, all of these things are what's coming. And then soon you'll be hearing a lot about dark matter and all of these kind of companies. So again, another big story we have is Tulsi Gabbard dropping the bombshell on 120 plus U.S. biolabs in 30 plus countries. That was exposed by the Director of National Intelligence, which is what her role is. So let's take a listen to this video. Ultimately, I thought this was pretty insane. When you look at this, you just can't stress enough how the game really works.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files, today I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine, which could be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the intelligence community had previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Now, until now, evidence regarding the full existence and funding of these laboratories had been knowingly withheld from you, the American people. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research.
There it is. I remember in 2020 when I was called a conspiracy theorist for this kind of talk, and now it is being released and declassified by the U.S. government themselves, by the Defense National Intelligence Agency. Isn't that insane?
Very little visibility or oversight. Now, President Trump clearly understands the serious threat dangerous gain-of-function research poses to the American people. And this is why he took decisive action over a year ago. On May 25th, 2025, he signed an executive order to end federal funding of gain-of-function research around the world. Here at ODNI, I issued new guidance to the intelligence community directing increased collection on these laboratories and facilities overseas. And we're already seeing the results of this increased collection. We're learning new details, for example, on clinical trials that are underway at these facilities and that are raising significant ethical, financial, and security concerns regarding the supposed public health initiatives and U.S. national security. Now, despite the obvious potential for catastrophic global impact that research on dangerous pathogens in biolabs can have, politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci, as well as entities within the Biden administration's national security team, lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs.
What do you know?
Not only did they lie, they threatened those who attempted to expose the truth. So this release today breaks new ground, as the information surrounding the existence, history, locations, and funding of these U.S.-funded biolabs has been intentionally covered up by very powerful people who falsely claimed that these biolabs didn't exist. Now, they accused anyone who says otherwise to be foreign assets and traitors to America. Now, ODNI will continue working closely with partners across the U.S. government to identify exactly where these labs are and what pathogens they contain to end dangerous gain-of-function research that threatens the health and well-being of the American people and people around the world.
Look at that. So when you see these stories, just remember in 2020, they were calling you a conspiracy theorist for talking like that. But now, again, Tulsi Gabbard is coming out with the truth and basically admitting that there was gain-of-function research in Ukraine and, again, all over the entire planet, really. And they didn't want you to know about it. You weren't supposed to know about it. DNI Gabbard reveals evidence of U.S. taxpayer-funded global biolab program. Keyword there, U.S. taxpayer-funded. You paid for it. Washington, D.C., after months of researching through intelligence community holdings and files, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is revealing new evidence of long-standing United States government funding for more than 120 biolabs in over 330 countries. Not 330, in over 30 countries. These biolabs include labs in Ukraine, which may be at risk of compromise due to ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. For example, the intelligence community previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely house dangerous pathogens and remain vulnerable for long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. So again, when we look at all of that, this is pretty much the entire file that we can look at. This is declassified by DNI Gabbard. Again, everything's blacked out. But you look at a lot of this storage of BW pathogens from Soviet era. So here's the locations you'll find it. U.S. training for Ukrainian scientists to work in biocontainment, especially dangerous pathogen EDP certification, repository of BW and disease-causing pathogens, anthrax, tularemia, tuberculosis, swine fever, Newcastle's disease, MERS, SARS. Again, what was SARS? They said that COVID was very similar to SARS. Marburg, Ebola. Ooh, remember the big Ebola. Lassa, the plague, and rickettsia. So again, you look at all of this, BSL-4, BSL-3, BSL-2, BSL-1, and then unknown. You see these different research types, human, animal, both, and unknown, all over the place. Wouldn't you? Look at that. So again, this has been approved for public release by the ODNI on April 23rd, 2026, and they just now released that statement not too long ago. But when we look at this again, Kirsten Diagnostic Laboratory, Kirsten Oblast Laboratory Center, Institute of Veterinary Medicine of the National Academy of Agrarian Sciences, Central Reference Laboratory, Ukrainian Research Anti-Plague Institute, and the Zakhar Partska Diagnostic Laboratory and the Zakhar Partska Oblast Laboratory Center. So again, look at that. $1.728 million paid for at the Kirsten Diagnostic Laboratory and Kirsten Oblast Laboratory. And then at the Institute of Veterinary Medicine, that was $2.1 billion right there. Pretty crazy. Total cost of the laboratory, $3.49 million. The Central Reference Laboratory of Ukrainian Research Anti-Plague Institute. So again, taxpayer funded. And then the Zakhar Partska with $1.92 million. So you look at all of these. Technical assistance plan for designated recipients of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, registration card number 2222504, dated 21/05/12. So again, that's May 21st, 2012. Donor, the Department of Defense of the United States of America. Beneficiary/executive agent, the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. Crazy. Then here are all the different companies. Ukraine Labs, webs of connections to the U.S. BW defense industry. So again, sampling of Ukrainian scientific collaborator work. The USDA, World Health Organization, University of Florida, the U.S. Army, United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Disease, Ministry of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine. They don't want you reading this. Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, Ministry of Health of Ukraine, Public Health Center. Again, diagnostics of veterinary and sanitary expertise. They have CEFASO. You have the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, of course. That's the home of Dr. Fauci. Again, the National University of the Environmental Sciences of Ukraine, Navy Medical Research Center, the Institute of Veterinary Medicine, the National Veterinary Research Institute. That looks like Polway, Poland. University of Alaska Anchorage, Ukrainian Anti-Plague Research Institute. We covered that. Institute of Experimental and Clinical Veterinary Medicine, the University of Tennessee, the Joint Genome Institute, State Scientific Control Institute of Biotechnologies and Strains of, can't read that there, microorganisms, the University of New Mexico, Research Institute of Epidemiology and Hygiene, Orion can't read that one. Then you just look at some of these crazy. Black and Viatech, Building a World of Difference, Metabiota. You have the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research, Kansas State University, and the State Forest Resources Agency of Ukraine. So again, pretty wild when you look at this. Look at this. Just absolutely crazy. Implementation of cell culture and nucleic acid sequencing capabilities at the Ukrainian Research and Anti-Plague Institute in order to foster and improve viral diagnosis. Again, That was not pursued. TO1 veterinary TAP2, development and use of express method for aviation influenza virus, diagnostics based on reverse transcription loop mediated isothermal amplification. That was completed. Again, analysis of the threat of African swine fever and classical swine fever in wild boar populations in Ukraine. That was the TO1 veterinary TAP3. Again, completed. Molecular characterization of highly pathogenic avian influenza virus, HPAIV, and virulent Newcastle disease virus, the VNDV, isolated in Ukraine, completed. TO4 veterinary TAP2, serological monitoring of glanders in Ukraine and evaluation of serological methods for laboratory diagnosis of glanders, completed. TO4 veterinary TAP3, analysis and review of Ukrainian legislation and guidelines for veterinary laboratory diagnostics, quality assurance, biological safety, and biological security for specified EDPs with the aim of identifying potential enhancements to the veterinary system of Ukraine, completed. TO4 veterinary TAP4, community outreach to support understanding of ASF ecology and epidemiology in Eastern Europe, training and implementation for methods and strategies for control and prevention, completed. And then TO4 veterinary TAP5, grantsmanship in action, development and submission of a National Science Foundation grant application for avian influenza research in Ukraine. And I don't know what that means. That means ongoing, it says. And then TO4 veterinary TAP6, analysis of the threat of spread for African swine fever and classical swine fever in wild boar populations in Ukraine, improving diagnosis, surveillance, and prevention. Again, completed. The U.S. paid Ukrainian scientists to study the genome of highly pathogenic avian flu and other highly infectious viruses in biocontainment labs, which were also paid for by the U.S. government. Isn't that just sweet and amazing? Again, Russia accused the U.S. of BW work in a basement lab in the facility, and guess what? Turns out they were right. So when you look at a lot of this, pretty wild, pretty crazy to see it. This is what's going on behind closed doors, and you're not supposed to know about it. And so it made sense as to why right after that came out, we also saw, and who knows if there's really a connection here, but I found it to be interesting timing. Only a couple days later, Russia's biggest attack yet, 681 drones and missiles hit Kiev, ancient cathedral on fire. Russia launched one of its largest recent combined attacks overnight into June 15, 2026. This was today. 70 missiles and 611 drones mainly targeting Kiev. Ukraine's air defense intercepted 632 50 missiles and 582 drones, 20 ballistic cruise missiles, and 27 drones struck 42 sites. Debris fell elsewhere. Power outages hit over 140,000 households in Kiev. Casualties, at least 9 to 11 killed nationwide. In Kiev, 4 to 5 dead, 25 to 35 injured, including children/pregnant women. In Kharkiv, 5 rescuers killed in a double-tap strike while responding to an initial hit. 9+ wounded, no confirmed Russian enemy military casualties from this specific barrage. Key incident direct strike sparked a major fire at the Dormition Assumption Cathedral in Kiev, Perchek Lavra, the UNESCO site founded in 1051. Zelensky called it a crime against Christian culture. Fire contained substantial damage, but core structure largely saved. Professional analysis I gave here was that it appeared to be a saturation attack to overwhelm defenses ahead of G7 talks, blending high-end missiles Iskander and Zyklon with mass drones. High interception rate 91% shows improved Ukrainian air defense, but breakthroughs with highlighted vulnerabilities in ballistic threats and urban density. Symbolic targeting of cultural sites amplified psychological impact and international condemnation. Russia denies deliberate civilian hits, claiming military targets. Escalation risks rising amid stalled diplomacy. Sustained Western air defense aid remains critical to Ukraine. And again, the sources for this came from Reuters, AP News, DW, Kiev Post, Ukrainska Pravda, and Ukrainian Air Force statement. So again, pretty big news. This happened this morning. So pretty wild. But this war is going on with Russia and Ukraine. That continues on. We continue to see back-to-back strikes from them. Again, the Ukrainians are pretty much fighting the Russians as a proxy to the United States. And essentially, we are trying to overwhelm the Russians with Ukrainian ground forces. And then also, the Ukrainians have pretty powerful drone technology. And the Russians, though, are also using the same thing. And the Russians pretty much outnumber the Ukrainians as well. And right now, Russia is winning the narrative war, I would say, because we realize that the United States and Zelensky, they've been basically using taxpayer-funded dollars to pay for this entire Ukrainian war, while the Russians are just trying to actually, in my opinion, more preserve the Christian kind of identity. Seems quite the opposite of what the media is trying to tell us, ultimately. So interesting developments there with Russia versus Ukraine that happened this morning. And so again, Trump says U.S. deal with Iran is now complete. This is also breaking news. This is just 2 hours ago.
Trump is in Europe for the G7 summit, where a signed memorandum of agreement with Iran will feature prominently in the gathering. The Trump administration is promising to release the full text of the deal later this week. CBS's Torian Small has more from the White House.
Speaking from the G7 summit in France, President Trump touted an electronically signed agreement to end the war with Iran.
The main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They fully agreed to that.
An official signing ceremony is set for Friday, expected to be in Geneva, Switzerland. Vice President J.D. Vance will be on hand.
We plan to release the full text this week. We want the American people to see it.
For now, hundreds of ships remain at a standstill in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. military says its blockade of Iranian ports remain in effect until that Friday signing, when President Trump says the key waterway will be completely opened.
It's a very important step towards peace, but as well for the global economy.
France's president congratulated Trump and offered to dispatch fighter aircraft as soon as Tuesday to conduct observation flights over the strait.
Everybody's breathing a sigh of relief in Europe and around the world that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be reopened, because the nightmare scenario was going to be that this dragged right through the summer.
A longer-term closure of the strait could have continued to drive up oil prices at a peak time for consumption. President Trump says
oil
gas
prices went down.
At home are already coming down. The official signing will set off 60 days of talks to still negotiate some of the stickiest issues, including how to destroy Iran's nuclear stockpile.
Whether we play an observer role or whether we play a more active role, these are the sorts of things that we'll figure out in technical talks.
Israel's role is also in question. The U.S. says it expects all parties to cooperate, but Israel officials say they're not bound to the agreement to end fighting with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Torian Small, CBS
They want
News,
Lebanon. That's not going to stop.
Mike Cox.
That's been the one thing. That's been the one thing that's been really affecting this war is the Israelis are not willing to stop. They do want to take Lebanon, and they want to use the Gaza model, as they've said themselves. So again, initial deal to end the U.S.-Iran war moves towards formal signing despite lingering questions. So again, when we look at that, this happened over the weekend as well.
Just had a big day. I know you'll never be satisfied, but that's okay. That doesn't
We hope it happens.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran.
This is just a few days ago.
Subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. Stock market's up 1,000 points. That means they like the deal. See, that means they like. If the market goes down, that means they don't like the deal. But it's been up, oil's dropped, oil will start coming down. And most importantly, we have a deal that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, which was the whole purpose of what we had to go through to get this. So it was a big, very big thing. But we have a signing soon, and the documents are in pretty final shape, so we'll see. We'll see.
You said this was just the concept of that agreement. So is this just essentially setting the stage for deeper talks on nuclear?
It's a very strong memorandum of understanding. That is a little conceptual, but it's something that's going to get done. And if it doesn't get done for any reason, which I can't imagine that not happening, they want to sign it as much as I do or more. I would say they want to sign it more, maybe a lot more. But it's a very detailed memorandum of understanding, also agreed to by many other countries that have great influence over them, and everybody wants it done. So it's going to get done.
That needs to happen, though. I mean, the strait needs to be open, apparently. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the United States was already controlling the strait before this entire war. So it's rather important that, we do have a strategic withdrawal. That would be winning for the United States, in my opinion. Again, winning this war is not to back down. Again, winning the war is technically to have a strategic withdrawal for the United States. That would be winning for us. Again, Strait of Hormuz security concerns remain high for shipping. Shipping organizations BIMCO and maritime security firm Vanguard among those advising caution by ship owners on the reopening of the shipping route. So again, this comes out from the Sea Trade Maritime News, June 15th, today. The agreement set to be signed on June 19th between the U.S. and Iran has been giving ground for optimism on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, but considerable uncertainties remain. The agreement in itself is not a peace deal, but a memorandum of understanding that marks the start of a 60-day negotiating period and extends the ceasefire for that period. We already know which country is likely not going to abide by that. As part of the ceasefire, Iran has said it will reopen the Strait of Hormuz and the U.S. will stand down its blockade of Iranian ports. Jacob Larson, Chief Security and Security Officer at BIMCO, commented, "The statements by the U.S. and Iran are currently unclear and do not offer sufficient information regarding key aspects such as timings and safe routes. Due to lack of details and a history of overly optimistic reassurances, we believe that the security for the situation for the shipping industry remains volatile, and we will still consider it very risky for ships to commerce transit at this point. We advise ship owners to continue doing thorough risk assessments and appeal to all parties to put the safety of seafarers first." As with the International Chamber of Shipping, the ICS, it believes a neutral body such as the UN through the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, should direct the resumption of maritime traffic in the waterway. The next step is for ship owners to be reassured that the transiting of the Strait of Hormuz is not openly permitted but also safe. Ships trapped in the Persian Gulf will also be interested in leaving as soon as it is safe to do so. This must be done at a coordinated manner due to the confined nature of the strait. The threat of mines also remains, and that is still going on. Maritime security firm Vanguard Tech said it assessed it would be a managed reopening rather than a full reopening of the strait. While the risk of a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz has decreased, caution is advised surrounding any immediate changes to existing risk assessments until implementation of the agreement is confirmed and freedom of navigation has demonstrably resumed. Reporting also suggests that mine clearance operations, transit agreements, and the wider normalization of the maritime traffic could take weeks rather than days, Vanguard commented. There was also a similar note of a caution from Charlie Brown, shipping advisor to United States against the nuclear Iran, the UANI. Markets may celebrate the pending of reopening of Hormuz, but ship owners will focus on what comes next. Are the waters really clear of threats? Has freedom of navigation been actually restored? And what happens to U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil? Until those questions are answered, the crisis may be paused, but it is not over, Brown told the Sea Trade Maritime News. So again, big news in the Strait of Hormuz, as always, and basically it's that nothing's really changing too much. The insurance companies are still not feeling too hot about where this war is at right now. Today, when we look at the data and the information on where things are going with the Strait of Hormuz, again, a resilient corridor snapshot, the Strait of Hormuz continues to represent a critical maritime bottleneck characterized by an unprecedented operational paralysis. As of 6 o'clock p.m. on June 16, 2026, there are no commercial vessels actively moving outbound through the strait, nor have any successful completed transit today or in the 5 days. The sustained absence of traffic underscores a severe and concerning deterioration in regional maritime activity. So again, 4 vessels in the monitoring area, live outbound activity, search radius is about 140 kilometers. You can kind of see the charts here and what's going on with the verified outbound history over the last 50 days and kind of where everything's going. There hasn't been much activity at all. So again, when we're looking at that Strait of Hormuz, it's just a little map showing what the situation is right now. It doesn't, again, look like we're really having any movement here. Pretty much nothing going on there. Okay? So when we look at these stories, we have to understand that all of this definitely matters. And how does it affect oil prices? Well, it affects oil prices a lot. Okay, it's because, again, WTI The WTI crude is at $81.05. Brent crude's at $83.17. Merben crude's at $77.23. And natural gas is at $3.14. But this is all coming from Trump's statements and this potential peace deal. That's huge. And it's great news, actually. This entire potential agreement, we don't know if it's actually set in stone, but we have to wait for this 60-day period and this entire ceasefire period and basically this entire negotiation period really is what it is. So because of the good news, though, that's why the oil prices have not gone up. They've actually significantly gone down, which is good. And I was saying, as long as Trump continues the war, then the prices are going to go up. But if Trump gets ourselves out of this Iran war on Israel's behalf, then we will basically see those oil prices go down. Right? This entire Iran war was fought for the state of Israel. They are the only country at this current time that does not want to end the war. They want to continue the war. They believe that Hezbollah and taking southern Lebanon as a buffer zone is still the part of their greater Israel project, and they now see themselves independent from the United States, so they don't feel the need to listen to Trump, and they're going to basically do what they want. But that doesn't matter really when it comes to the United States, because America needs to get out of there. And a big part of that is to not allow Israel to lead the way with this entire thing. Just because they strike and tell Trump what to do, he has to be willing to say no, despite whatever kind of blackmail they want to try to use on him, which, again, we understand is the Epstein files, and we understand all of that is real, but what do we want more? Do we want a collapsed economy, or do we want the Epstein files coming out now or maybe later? Maybe both. And I think we'll see a little bit of both happen in the next coming weeks. So, again, breaking news today. Actually, we'll get into that in a minute because I wasn't quite done yet. Again, we'll just look at the map real quick. When we look at the Strait of Hormuz, we can see a little bit more traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz, but the issue is these are mostly Iranian vessels that we're looking at. Okay, so we actually have a U.S. vessel, the Jersey Devil Ray, that is an offshore vessel, and so it's interesting to see we do have one vessel in that area right now. So again, when we add that to the fleet, we can kind of see where a lot of this is going. Okay, so ultimately, let's go back to where we were here. And of course, we lost it. Marine traffic. So when we look at the strait, we have significantly more activity going on in the Strait of Hormuz than we've had in the past few weeks. In the past month, we've almost seen nothing in this area, which is, again, right here, this is important. And now we're seeing more traffic kind of slowly increasing, right? Again, the Jersey Devil 404 sailing vessel, we have that in the Strait of Hormuz right now. And we got a lot going on. Again, we also have we have a lot of Iranian vessels, though, in the same area. So it's interesting to see. We have a pleasure craft, the Handala failed. Again, all these different crafts right in the Strait of Hormuz. Again, then we have an Iranian vessel. So we got a lot of Iranian vessels in this area, and we got a couple U.S. vessels that are hanging out in this spot. So it seems like there is some kind of trade happening and movement actually happening, right? Iranian cargo vessels. So who knows what's really going on? Looks like these two American ships here, these pink ships that you see, the pleasure crafts, they're kind of being surrounded at the moment by these Iranian ships. So maybe we'll hear more about that information later. But it's interesting to say at the very least. So when we look at that, that's kind of where things are going. You still have anchored vessels. You still have a blockade here, but it looks like this blockade might be clearing up here in the next 60 days. Again, near Fujairah, this is where insurance companies like these companies, this is where insurance companies typically like these ships to dock and anchor. And that's these little red dots that you see. It's just signs of anchored vessels and proxy vessels of the United States and other countries. They all pretty much are docking here because they don't want to get shot out of the sea. Okay, same thing with just north of Dubai. We have all these anchored vessels over here, limited movements. We have Qatar. Again, lots of activity in Qatar. We have Bahrain. We've been seeing a lot of strikes on Bahrain by the Iranians, so that's interesting. And again, you're seeing mostly shipping vessels here. Fishing vessels, meant to say. And again, when you near Dammam, you have a lot of clusters here of crude oil tankers and whatnot. Again, we still have anchored vessels in the same spots right up here, just east of Kuwait. So, again, still anchored vessels over here in this area. Karg Island, a big spot where Trump has been originally talking, not anymore. He was saying that Americans really don't have the stomach for it. But we don't see a lot of activity in this area. So it doesn't look like the U.S. military, or at least our Navy, at least anything that's on AIS is not showing to be close to Karg Island right now. Okay, and then when we look on the west coast of Saudi Arabia at the Red Sea and the Suez Canal over here where the cursor is, we do have a little bit more traffic going through the Suez Canal. We still have anchored vessels here, as you can see, these crude oil tankers, these red dots, that's typically your crude oil tankers, shipping containers, and things like that. So again, your LNG tankers, your liquefied natural gas. This is a Liberian ship right here that you're looking at. Their flag looks like the United States, but it's not the United States. But they are a proxy vessel of the United States. So it's always important to see when you see those vessels from any kind of LNG vessels. Always important to track that kind of movement. So the Red Sea north to south still has movement going through it. That means that there's still movement going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait down in southwestern Saudi Arabia here, which is Yemen area. And again, we still have traffic going through there. So again, all good signs. We still have a lot of pretty much congested traffic going on the southern tip of Africa, which tells us that everything is pretty much the same. Insurance companies are holding off and everybody's in limbo. They're waiting to see what happens. Okay, and then when we look at Israel and then Lebanon, it looks like the only kind of real trade that we're seeing in the area is obviously going to the Tel Aviv areas, to Ashad, and then northern Israel we have Haifa. That's typically a pretty common dock you'll see. Nothing going to Tyre, Lebanon, which is southern Lebanon. This is what the Israelis just recently struck. And then we also have just north of that, we have Nabatea, which has also been getting struck a lot. But again, we don't have a lot of marine traffic in this area. So again, they're being closed off from any kind of resources at the moment. Beirut, again, what's interesting is that a lot of these Christian villages that were living in Tyre, Lebanon were pushed northwards up to Beirut, and now Beirut's getting struck. Why is that? Very weird connections there I've been observing over time. So again, Beirut has been a big attack recently by the Israelis. So it's interesting to see all of this happening, and you still have trade between the EU and the United States in Cyprus. So all interesting things happening with those developments. And then again, when we look at crypto, the fear and greed index is a little bit better than it was last week. We're at 25 versus 14. We were doing really bad last week. Bitcoin's at $66,163 today. Ethereum's at $1,788.31. XRP standing at $1.23. Solana's at $73.74. Hyperliquid's at $68.09. And essentially, Stellar Lumen's at 21 cents. All of these other coins, HBAR at 8 cents. So you have a lot of different assets here. Emerging markets all waiting for the Clarity Act in crypto. And that Senate Ethics Committee hearing is going to be on July 4th of this year. So we'll be seeing that happen. And then, of course, we have the gold prices at $4,317.84 an ounce, with silver at $69.95 an ounce. So again, this was also big news today. The Edwards AFB crash, the B-52 crashes after takeoff.
Live now from Fox, I'm Ryan Schmelz. We have some breaking news to get here. An explosion has been reported at Edwards Air Force Base in California. We have some live looks of the explosion right now, the aftermath of this, which is a significant amount of debris, a significant crash site here with smoke coming out. It looks like somebody's wiping down the shot right now. And earlier we could see fire trucks in the shot, and they just dwarfed the site there, where all the black debris is, as well as the smoke. We do have some information here from Edwards Air Force Base, which put out a statement on its X account saying this: a United States Air Force B-52 Stratofortress crashed shortly after takeoff on the Edwards Airfield at 11:20 a.m. Emergency crews immediately responded to the scene, and the situation is ongoing. More information will be provided as it becomes available. And you see the massive presence that is there right now on the scene, which makes a lot of sense. Not a shocker, but you just see how small some of these, that's a fire truck there in the far left corner that you see right there. And then you also have some pickup trucks and some other crews that are on scene as well. But we do have some information here on the B-52 Stratofortress. So According to the Air Force website, the B-52H Stratofortress is a long-range heavy bomber that can perform a variety of missions. The bomber is capable of flying at high subsonic speeds of altitudes up to 50,000 feet. It can carry nuclear or precision-guided conventional ordnance with worldwide precision navigation capability. Features. In a conventional conflict, the B-52 can perform strategic attack, close air support, air interdiction, offensive counter-air, and maritime operation. During Desert Storm, the B-52 delivered 40% of all the weapons dropped by coalition forces. It is highly effective when used for ocean surveillance and can assist the U.S. Navy in anti-ship and mine-laying operations. In 2 hours, 2 B-52s can monitor 140,000 square miles of ocean surface. All B-52s can be equipped with 2 electro-optical
I think this guy on
sensors,
Fox News is brand new.
a forward-looking infrared and advantage targeting pods to augment targeting. Battle assessments and flight.
So really interesting. Yeah, that was a big story today. Again, B-52. There's a couple more clips on that. I also wanted to cover the HR 8800 subsection 222, 223, 224, and 622. And these are rather important to cover. Again, section 222 of the HR 8800 of the National Defense Authorization Act of the fiscal year 2027. This is the operational autonomy requirements for unmanned surface vessels. So what is this bill? First of all, before I get into this is basically allowing the Israeli military to merge. They say that it's not a fusion or a merging, but it really is. It is basically a merging, and it is basically giving the Israeli military a bunch of power to really link up with the United States military, and they would have full access to basically all of the same information that our military does. All of the same classified documents, all of the same unmanned surface vessel intelligence, all of the same kind of technology and operational, kind of things that we're working on. So again, it would merge and fuse our two militaries together, which means they'd have all this information. And again, when we look at Jonathan Pollard, who was an Israeli spy, he ended up selling a lot of U.S. government secrets to our enemies, and again, at the time, which was the Russians. And he had sold these nuclear secrets to the Russians. So what happens when we merge the Israeli military with the U.S. military? Well, it doesn't really matter what Trump has to say anymore, and it doesn't really matter what you have to say anymore. Congress basically is writing in a law that makes it possible for our militaries to combine, and that now we are one military, essentially. And anything that Israel does implicates us. Anything that we do as the U.S. military implicates Israel. And so that's the problem with this, is it is giving Israel a lot of power. Okay, so let's dig deeper on this. Subsection 222, operational autonomy requirements for unmanned surface vessels. This section sets requirements for operational autonomy in unmanned surface vessels, USVs. It mandates that certain USVs achieve higher levels of autonomous operations to reduce reliance on constant human control, improve performance in contested environments, which is the Indo-Pacific, for example, and supports missions like escort, reconnaissance, and logistics. Defines thresholds for autonomy, navigation, obstacle avoidance, mission execution without real-time human input. It ties to broader unmanned systems modernization, addressing vulnerabilities in communications, denied scenarios. Likely includes testing, certification, and reports requirements to Congress on progress and risks, cybersecurity, reliability. So again, this supports the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps priorities for distributed maritime operations and contested logistics, but basically it allows the Israeli military to have access to this kind of information as well. This aligns with DoD's push for attributable, scalable autonomous platforms. It promotes industrial-based development for USV technologies while imposing oversight to ensure safety and effectiveness. No major new funding is authorized here. It leverages existing RDT and E accounts. So Section 223 was really the big part, the realignment of the National Strategic Institute of the Department of the Air Force. This provision realigns with the National Strategic Research Institute, a university-affiliated research center from its prior structure, often associated with the broader DoD or other services under the Department of the Air Force. It transfers oversight, funding, and mission alignment to the Air Force for better integrate strategic research, deterrence, nuclear, hypersonics, long-range missile spikes, space, and emerging threats with Israel. It's not saying that. Grok is deliberately leaving that out, but that's a big part of this. Aims to streamline operations, reduce redundancies, and enhance focus on Air Force/Space Force and priorities. Includes transitional authorities reporting on impacts and preservation of core research capabilities. So everything we do, the Israelis have to know about it. And that's part of this entire subsection. UARCs provide independent long-term research. This realignment strengthens Air Force-led strategic initiatives amid great power competition, potentially improving efficiency but requiring careful management of inter-service equities. It fits Title II's emphasis on program requirements and limitations. So again, this is Section 224. This again is the real big one. This is everything you really need to know here. The United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative, sometimes renumbered as 219 in amendments, floor versions. This is a high-profile policy section establishing a formal U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. Okay? It institutionalizes and accelerates bilateral defense tech beyond traditional aid. Key provisions. Requires the Secretary of Defense to designate a senior executive agent to synchronize, expand, and accelerate cooperative efforts. So basically that means that you'd have some kind of Israeli soldier always in the Pentagon at all times who would have a say in everything we would do. Covers research, development testing, and evaluation, RDT&E, integration, and industrial cooperation. See, so that's why I included Section 222 in there and why that's so important, as well as 223. The Israelis would have to know everything about all of those operations now. Facilitates faster transition of joint technologies into U.S. programs of record, rapid adoption of Israeli innovations, joint exercises, and embedding U.S. systems. Requires regular, often annual, reporting to Congress on progress, transitions, implementation through 2030, and it gives no dedicated new appropriations using existing authorities. So again, Israel would have access to all of this information in a nutshell. Context and debate. Builds on prior cooperation, the Iron Dome and Arrow, and draws from U.S.-Israel Futures Act. Supporters enhances U.S. capabilities against shared threats, Iran, terrorism. There really is no threat against Iranian terrorism at the moment, beside the fact that they will obviously retaliate for any kind of strikes we do. We literally are coming to a peace deal. So what is this really good for, right? Via Israeli innovation and interoperability. Well, again, what is Israel's objective? They want Iran gone. So this basically gives Israel power over our own Congress and our military intelligence to basically stronghold the United States into a war with Iran. If it's important to Israel, we would have to join in and do it. Again, everything America does, it implicates Israel. Everything Israel does, it implicates America. That's the whole idea here. Critics, amendments by Reps Massey and Khanna, risks deeper supply chain entanglement, 100% true, reduces U.S. strategic autonomy, less congressional oversight, shifting from FMF aid, and data sharing concerns. Bipartisan amendments to strike it were offered but largely unsuccessful in the committee. It appears in Subtitle B of Title II alongside the other RDT and E program matters. So again, I also wanted to talk about 622 of this HR 8800. Again, they're not telling you about this part. They've told you about Section 223, 224. They didn't really tell you about Section 222, and they really didn't tell you about Section 622. And other personalized benefits. Subtitle C, leave. It addresses accumulation of leave for members of the armed forces, likely extending or modifying rules on leave carryover, accrual caps, and special circumstances. It is standard personnel policy provision with limited controversy. Note on user reference, discussions of subsection 622 in Israel intelligence contexts often refer to a separate Senate Intelligence Authorization Act. So think about that. This would require a separate Senate Intelligence Authorization Act. And again, provision titled United States-Israel Intelligence Sharing Enhancement. Look at this. United States-Israel Intelligence Sharing Enhancement. That's wild. That would expand and protect intelligence sharing with Israel on Iran, terrorism, and cyber, etc., with limits on reductions requiring a presidential national security determination and congressional reporting. It is not HR 8800, but pairs thematically with NDA subsection 224. Overall contents in HR 8800. These sections reflect priorities of RDT&E modernization, autonomy, strategic research, and alliances, Israeli alliances, and personnel benefits. The bill advances from HASC 4412 and emphasizes industrial-based resilience, emerging tech, and alliances. Exact language and any renumbering, Israel section, may evolve on the floor or in conference with the Senate version. For full statutory text, consult the chairman's mark PDF and Congress. Yeah, and you should be contacting your congressman and your state representative because this is bad. We cannot give Israel all of this power, and we cannot do this. We've never done this for another country when it comes to this kind of integration into our military operations. Never done it before. We really shouldn't be starting now. So, to finish off the show, again, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. suggests Israel most likely lost the war against Iran, admitting that none of its major objectives were achieved. He says Iran will remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz, gain access to frozen assets, and receive sanctions relief. He also says Israel has no idea what happened to Iran's nuclear stockpile. None of those goals have been achieved. There's a somber mood in Israel tonight.
Tolls will receive frozen. And that was all crucial goals for Israel's national security. Right now, none of those goals have been achieved. And so there's a somber move in Israel tonight. We're not participating in the celebrations just yet. I'm sure it'll be very interesting to see what is actually in this agreement and not just what's being reported by various media outlets around the region and around the world. But there's great concern here that Iran, at the end of the day, will remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz, if not accepting tolls, will receive frozen assets from the United States, maybe sanctions relief that will enable Iran to rebuild its military and strategic capabilities, continue supporting terror, continuing building ballistic missiles, and still the question of what's the future of the nuclear program and the nuclear stockpile will remain unanswered. That's a lot to say right there, Sandra, but that is the concern in Israel tonight.
So again, the Iranians, though, it's so important to know that when they say Iran's nuclear stockpile, the only reason Iran wants to have a nuclear enrichment program is to have deterrence against Israel, who has 90 to 200 nuclear warheads. Okay? So that is the only reason the Iranians have always wanted to have some kind of nuclear enrichment program. The Iranians have never threatened the United States. There has never been a national security threat from the Iranians in regards to nuclear. They have been more interested in staying an independent nation. They have 90 million people. They're well off. They really don't need the United States. And one of the reasons that they have actually defeated the United States military and Israel in this war is because they have not fallen to this Rockefeller system that we have. They've really not focused on using the petrodollar. They've limited their usage of it, which has allowed them to use their own currency, which has allowed them to mass produce anti-missile systems and missile systems for basically this moment. And they've been preparing for this war for about 20 years. Okay, the Iranians have always known that this day was going to come, basically because Netanyahu since 1967 has been saying that he wanted to attack Iran. And basically he's wanted to do this since 1967. So the Iranians have been preparing for this exact war for, again, about 20 years. And again, anybody in military intelligence should know better. Non-strategic, and again, it is non-beneficial for the United States and our objectives of remaining, hegemony over the entire region. Okay, so really, our enemies should be those countries who are selling our nuclear secrets. Countries like China, who are, again, 350 times at the rate of mass production of their U.S. Navy vessels and their technology. Okay, 350 times. So they're moving fast, they're building fast, and the United States is kind of not doing that. So we need to be focusing on our real enemies if we're not going to ally with them, that is. If we're not going to work with China, then those are the countries we need to work with. China's building artificial islands in the South China Sea right now as we speak. And what are they doing with those? Well, they're pointing a lot of those, they're building their own nuclear sites. They are building their own programs and things like that. And basically, they're doing the same things the Iranians are doing, underground nuclear programs. So again, really, and at the same time, they are also preparing for an invasion of Taiwan, which would basically take control over the semiconductor market and that entire market itself. And even Trump has said we wouldn't be able to really do that war because we're thousands and thousands of miles away. and it would be basically merely impossible to protect Taiwan against China. That's just realism. And here the United States has always promised to protect Taiwan against China because we want the semiconductors, we want the rare earth elements, we want that control over that market. But ideally, that is the war we should be focusing on, if any. When really, in my opinion, we should be allying with the Chinese. Really, in my opinion, I think we should be allying with Russia. We should be leaving Ukraine to fend for themselves. Zelensky should be fending for himself at this point. You know, I have nothing against the Ukrainian people, but there's really no use for us to be fighting this war for the Ukrainians. American tax dollars paying for this Ukrainian war, and then Zelensky continuing to ask, Americans for more money to fight their war. Again, the Biden administration was huge about fighting Ukraine. So ultimately, we need to focus our energy on enemies who are actually our enemies. And really, we shouldn't have any. We should be, as the United States, a middleman. We should be trading, and that would be the ultimate form of power for the United States. We have the most money. We have the most dominant currency. We're good. That's all we could do. We could trade with these countries and say, hey, yeah, we'll give you some money. We'll help you out. In return, give us tit for tat. And it could be really easy and really great. But we've refused to do that as a country. And it's destroyed our country in many ways from a national security perspective. Also, just in UK to supply nuclear fuel to Ukraine, up sanctions on Russia, Prime Minister Starmer. So again, if you didn't know, Prime Minister Starmer of England or Britain, they've been basically supporting Ukraine and this entire movement, to this entire effort to, destroy the Russians in this war. When really the Russians are basically holding back and waiting for the right time, and eventually they're going to, they're going to go to war with Poland, and they're going to go to war with Germany, and they're going to go to war with, basically they're going to go to war with these countries who are working against their own interests. And I'm not I'm America first at the end of the day. That's what I care about most. But if we're thinking about all of these different nations, if we're talking globalism, then the Europeans ought to be not supporting the Ukrainians, because it's only hurting the European economy and overall the EU. It's not helping anybody in the EU, and as well as NATO and the United Nations, who has no money. So again, this is Vladimir Zelensky. We offered Putin to meet anywhere where real decisions to end the war could be made. He does not want it. We discussed the U.S. and France and the possibility of meeting with Russia around the G7 with all democratic nations represented. Putin does not want it. Yesterday, we discussed with President Trump that such a meeting could be organized in the U.S. in a format where Putin would find it much harder to refuse, at least to President Trump. We will see what comes of it. If Russia refuses, the chance as will, additional pressure will be needed. So again, here's Zelensky. This is Zelensky continuing the war when he just attacked St. Petersburg, Russia, which is a huge oil refinery for the Russians. And the Ukrainians have also basically been striking Russia hard, basically again and again. And they started this entire war with Russia. And they've been taking American tax dollars to pay for their war. Thanks, Zelensky.
We offered Putin to meet
Another interesting observation here. Zelensky speaking in English. Why would Zelensky be speaking in English here? Why would he not be speaking in Ukrainian? What do you think the message is? What do you think the real objective is? This is to pull on the heartstrings of the Americans. They want you or anybody in the EU to basically give him money. He wants money. If he didn't want money and if he was speaking to the people of Ukraine, he'd be speaking in Ukrainian. But he's speaking in English. And that's because he's trying to speak to you to get you to basically be on the side of the Ukrainians so you can pay more of your American tax dollars towards this entire unnecessary war.
Anywhere where real decisions to end the war could be made.
He's trying to get money out of the EU and the United States. That's what this is.
And we discussed with the US and France the possibility of a meeting with Russia around the G7 with all democratic nations represented. Putin does not want it. Yesterday, we discussed with President Trump that such a meeting could be organized in the US in a format where Putin would find it much harder to refuse, at least to President Trump. And we will see what comes of it. If Russia refuses this chance as well, additional pressure will be needed.
What does that mean? We need more of your money. Americans, we need more of your money. And Europe, we want more of your money. We want to continue this war. And that is really the objective of Zelensky. And he's really hurting the Ukrainian people by continuing this war when they're getting completely decimated. If anything, the Ukrainians have an edge when it comes to their drone, technology and their ability to mass produce drones and FPVs and whatnot. But the Russians are now basically reverse engineering it. China is reverse engineering pretty much everything that not just the Ukrainians, but also the United States, all the missiles that we've launched and lobbed into Iran. Everything's been reverse engineered now. We've basically given away all of our cards. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, against the Iranians' access of evil, we will fully renew the octopus doctrine that we began implementing in my government. One hand prevents Iran from breaking through to nuclear capability, and the other accelerates the collapse of the regime through political, economic, and technological and military means. The countdown of the regime change in Iran will begin at the moment the government in Israel is replaced. Soon the people of Israel will choose a new leadership, energetic, determined, and professional, that will restore security to Israel and care for you, Israeli citizens, wholeheartedly. So, see, again, he's not speaking English, is he? He's speaking his own language, because he's speaking to the people of Israel. So clearly the message isn't meant to be directed towards Americans. So you're really not supposed to know a lot of that. This is Joe Kent, who is CIA, and he was former national security something. If the deal involves giving Iran billions of dollars, our best bet is to simply walk away. Agreed. Providing such a massive sum will only end in catastrophe. Not only will President Trump be accused of cutting a deal worse than Obama's JCPOA, but the Iranians will undoubtedly use some of the money to fund their proxies. This would ultimately create a new justification for resuming the war, and round we go. A deal sounds nice in principle, but it's not needed to end this. Pull our troops out of the region and don't give Iran access to billions. Deprive them of the ability to hit us and deprive them of the means to fund their proxies. Iran will have a hard time interfering with shipping in the Strait of Hormuz without a U.S. presence in the region as justification for their aggression. At the same time, cut or at the very least reduce military aid to Israel to prevent them from striking Iran and hitting Lebanon. Definitely. Going forward, leverage the potential of sanctions relief as a tool to keep the Strait of Hormuz open and to secure assurances that Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon. Agreed. A formal deal essentially guarantees we'll have to maintain a presence in the region to enforce it. This cost alone is not worth our resources, neither blood nor treasure. This is all common sense. So Joe Kent is absolutely right there. Again, this was from Edwards Air Force Base in California, has confirmed a crash of a U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress shortly after takeoff from the base at 11:20 a.m. local this morning. This is a serious incident involving one of the U.S. Air Force's key strategic bombers. A B-52 Stratofortress forms the backbone of the American long-range bomber fleet. Details regarding the cause of the crash and the status of the crew are not yet available. Further information is expected from official sources in the coming hours. So again, we've seen a little bit of that earlier. Meanwhile, 2 hours ago, Israel just broke the ceasefire. They've broken it a few times over the past weekend. The IDF has bombed southern Lebanon, launching strikes in multiple areas of the country. They didn't even last 24 hours. True. We've been seeing quite a few strikes from Israel on southern Lebanon, particularly in the districts of Nabatea and Dabaya, as well as southern Lebanon and Tyre. Breaking, J.D. Vance confirms that Iran will get $300 billion for war damages.
CED, and people have to be skeptical.
Walk through some of this. The Iranians are saying that they're going to have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund. True or false?
Well, Ed, that's the sort of thing they could have access to, funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition, so long as they honor their end of the obligation. I think that one of the things you're going to see, Ed, and people have to be skeptical of this, is that the hardliners in the Iranian system will overemphasize the benefits that Iran gets while underemphasizing all the things that they have to concede and all the things they have to provide in order to get these benefits. So we absolutely are open to the Gulf Coast countries investing in the reconstruction of Iran, but only if Iran ends their nuclear program, ends their enriched stockpile of material, and is really open
They're
to
not going to
an
do that.
inspections and enforcement
They've
regime
said that.
gives the American people confidence they're never going to have a nuclear weapon. So I think the dance you're going to see, Ed, which is going to be interesting, is the Iranian media, especially the hardline media. They're going to talk a lot about what they get without talking about what they give. It's important for all of us to correct that record.
We already had control over the Strait of Hormuz, J.D. Vance. And if it wasn't for this war that we fought for Israel, on Israel's behalf, again, we would still be controlling the Strait of Hormuz. But now we're going to have to dish out $300 billion to the Iranians, which they are due, because, again, I mean, we started this war with the Israelis. Ultimately, you know, again, under the belief that Iran has this nuclear program and that they were going to nuke the United States, which none of this was true. And we found this to be true through multiple intelligence reports, not just Brendan Ecker's opinion. Okay, so at the end of the day, you know, it's very unfortunate, but yeah, we will have to dish out $300 billion to the Iranians for this entire thing. And they're probably going to end up winning big and controlling that entire Strait of Hormuz at the end of this, in my opinion. And ultimately, for, you know, the Trump administration or anybody in U.S. national security to suggest that the Iranians have to end their entire nuclear program and they got to be okay with not getting any sanctions relief, and then at the same time, none of that's going to happen. Maybe we'll meet somewhere in the middle, but ultimately we're going to have to pull out, and the Iranians are probably going to control most of that Strait of Hormuz. And there's going to be a strategic withdrawal of the United States from Iran, but that in itself would be an American victory, and it would essentially damage the control that Israel has over the United States. But it doesn't help with H.R. 8800 of the 2027 fiscal year for the National Defense Authorization Act. That also doesn't help. That needs to be completely struck from the entire bill in the Senate. And the Senate is full of boomers who are going to be completely for that. They're going to fund that entire integration and fusion of the Israeli military with the U.S. military, which is very dangerous. So that is the long-term play of the Israelis, and they're sitting good right now. They think that they have control over the Americans, the Israelis, and they believe that overall in the future they're going to be able to allow us to get into this war with Iran and do whatever they want by continuing to control us via this H.R. 8800 through Congress and through the Senate. So also, Candace Owens put out something 7 hours ago via FOIA. We formally requested Kash Patel's travel itinerary for the 3 days leading up to Charlie Kirk's assassination, and we just heard back and were told the burden of the request is too great. How is it even remotely illegal? Or how is it remotely even legal? So, big statement by Candace Owens, suggesting that Kash Patel knows a little bit more than he's leading on about the Charlie Kirk assassination and what really happened, who was really behind it. I think we all really know who was behind it, and I don't think it was the Tyler Robinson character at the end of the day. And at the very least, he was a small player in the role in a much bigger, deeper game. The Holocaust. So again, what else we got? This guy's kind of a propagandist. So pretty much that's the end of the news for today. Again, that took place in England. Young Bob, he is he's basically a debater in the UK. Someone has submitted footage of what happened. Look at how a gang of foreigners just randomly begin hitting and punching him. This is the first incident. After that, he tried to revive his things, and they tried to attack a second time. Then the police arrived. Viewer discretion advised. Probably should have said that first. But ultimately, that happened in the UK today. So again, that's what's going on. It's what happens when you allow your country to be flooded by, illegal immigrants. So ultimately, that's all the news that happened for today, Monday, June 15th. Let me know what you think. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. What do you think is going to happen with the Iran war? Do you think we are actually going to hit the end of this Iran war? Do you think Elon Musk is going to potentially save the day? Do you think Twitter X is going to be the main platform that eats all of the other ones? I think so. And what do you think about Tulsi Gabbard's release of the essentially 120 plus biolabs in 30 different countries? And again, we covered that at the beginning of this episode. Be sure to go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. We cover a lot of that, but ultimately all interesting developments over this past weekend, and going to be interesting to see where things go with this Iran war, whether or not we're going to be stuck in Iran, and whether or not this HR 8800, the subsections 222, 23, 223, and 224 are really going to keep a stronghold, as well as subsections 622 through 626. all worth investing in. And make sure you're contacting your local congressman, state representative, to say that you don't want that to happen. Very important. So we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And again, if you are willing to, if you do want to grow your business, be sure to work with me at Gold Shark Media AI. Pretty interesting software we built here for service-based businesses. Allows you to run your entire business from one place. Essentially, it's a CRM, but it allows you to white label software. Pretty much do everything you need. Social publisher, ROI calculators. It's got Google review setups here and templates, automations, everything built in for you. Your own LLM that you can create from it. Your own AI app builder. You can build, again, your own LLM, your limited language model, another ChatGPT, so to speak. Again, your ROI calculator, client intake form, landing page section, all this cool stuff. And again, if you want to work with me as a real estate agent, you want to invest in Michigan real estate, be sure to, again, visit BrendanEckerRealty.com and fill out the contact form here, or just click private consultation, and we'll talk about your situation in real estate, where you're at, and I'll help you acquire some Michigan real estate. Or I'll help you invest in Michigan real estate or sell Michigan real estate, whatever you need. And at the end of the day, if you want to become a licensed realtor yourself and make a little bit of extra money on the side, I created this online course, PassREUSA.com. Has 1,300 plus real estate practice questions, ebooks, lesson chapters, interactive videos, and PDFs for maximum value. And this is built for all 50 states, too. So it doesn't matter what state you live in. Again, you want to become a licensed real estate agent. This will help you do it. This will help you pass your state licensing exam. It's $100, and you keep it for life. It's not a monthly subscription. You pay one and done. And essentially, it'll help you, again, pass that state licensing exam. 1,300 practice questions. So again, want to make more money in this crazy economy, not a bad idea. So again, be sure to work with me, Brendan Ecker. Again, PassREUSA.com is where you can find this online course. BrendanEckerRealty.com if you want to work with me in real estate. Or GoldSharkMedia.com if you want to build your own AI and essentially run your business from one CRM, your one place. Essentially just like HubSpot, except a little bit better. You can white label it, do everything you possibly need. Got a nice trust center, all the questions you could possibly have answered for you in one place, and it's pretty good. So again, I highly recommend it. And it's got everything you could possibly need. So be sure to work with me at the end of the day. And with that being said, I got nothing else. Be sure to stay prudent, stay powerful, and stay wealthy.